Welcome to Bali. I'm here with Tracey Rackliff, who is a former New Zealand Police Detective Sergeant and who now is the owner of Tracey, an absolutely stunning hotel here in Bali, more of which in a few moments, or perhaps more than a few moments. We're going to talk first about your time as a New Zealand police officer, and fascinating background it is as well. So thank you so much for inviting me here to your hotel in Bali, the opportunity to talk about your career in New Zealand Police. So tell us first, what led you to join the police?
Something I think I'd always thought about since I was very young, maybe 15, 16. I had a bit of a colourful upbringing, so grew up in Australia with a single mother. So I think I always strived to do something more than what I had seen growing up. The police always appealed to me because I love being around people, and just that feeling of helping and giving back has always been something that's sat with me very well.
So you said you grew up in Australia, and yet you became a New Zealand police officer. How did that work out?
I was born in New Zealand and then went to Australia when I was 8 and grew up over there and went to school and got married and had 2 of my children, and then came back to New Zealand when I was 24, 25. So when I went back to New Zealand, I had 2 young children and then had a third while I was in New Zealand.
And at that point you hadn't yet joined the police, or had you?
No, I joined the police when my youngest was 2, so I was 28 when I joined.
How did you find that? Because you had a 2-year-old, and, you know, 2-year-olds are not known for being easy to look after. How did it work when you joined the police?
I had a very good relationship with my now ex-husband, and still have a very good relationship with him. So when we separated was when I joined the police. So he was fantastic. So he took on a lot more than what probably most men would do in that situation, and even the 50-50 was often more less of the 50 from my side because I was busy training initially, and then when I was working it was shift work, and a big job has come in, so your knock-off time that was supposed to be at 6 in the morning is now 10 in the morning. So yeah, he was instrumental for sure in me being able to do that.
And then, so you joined the police, you went through your initial training. Your time as what in the UK would be called a probationer, a new police officer, through to detective sergeants. Take us through how that developed. You moved from general duties at some point through to becoming a detective.
Yeah, in the New Zealand Police, you always, once you've graduated, you always have 2 years that you have to be on the street. I suppose that's a way to put it, on the street, but frontline policing in uniform. So then, I probably, after a couple of years of that, I worked in a small station in Masterton, so heavily involved in what's happening with the CIB, so with the detectives. So,
before you move on too far, it's Masterton. So those familiar with New Zealand will know exactly where Masterton is.
Yeah.
There'll be many watching this that won't have the foggiest idea where Masterton is. Just help us with that.
It's the area is the Wairarapa, which is just above, about an hour and a half north of Wellington. So that's the location.
Okay, so North Island, outside one of the major conurbations, Wellington, and north of that. So with its own particular challenges, but not the challenges of the capital city or the major conurbations. Okay, I interrupted you. Do please carry on.
It was good you saying that, because that's probably led on a little bit to, why I joined, and I think for me, when I was at college, at police college, a lot of the other officers were mainly going up to Auckland and back into Wellington, so big city policing. And at the time I thought, I'm missing out. I've got a young family, I can't move, I'm stuck with going back to Masterton. And I think a lot of other police at the time too, the trainees, also saw that as a bit of a step backwards, where in hindsight it was the complete opposite. Because it was a small area, even at frontline policing, the experiences that you don't get in the big cities, because, for example, you would have the detectives on call and the crime scene officers on call, so all of those would be there within seconds, and seconds because they're working. Where in the Wairarapa it was, if you were working at 4 o'clock in the morning and something happened, then you dealt with it. So I had the experience of being involved in a homicide very early on, when I was frontline policing, and got called to it as the acting sergeant in uniform, and had to deal with the offender. 2 young children had been stabbed to death. So very, very big stuff for someone. I think at the time I had 18 months experience. So, and everyone was looking at me like, "Well, what are you going to do?" So there was lots of those experiences that gave me the interest of, actually, I don't want to be just calling these guys. I want to be involved in doing that, from the detective perspective.
So from that particular homicide, that in itself a life-changing for you experience that you might not have found that you had to the same extent in a major conurbation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there would have been, if I had have been in a big area, there would have been big bosses coming out of the woodwork, but, people had to be called in. So, we were left dealing with it. It was a quickly evolving situation. We didn't get called to the job knowing what had happened. We actually discovered that throughout the time at the property. So it was, it was rolling. So we had to, everyone that was working that night had to deal with stuff that was pretty horrific. And I think most of us at the time had children. My 2 children were very close in age to the 2 girls as well. So, something that you just, you have to get on with. But that involvement for me in uniform, I think, was the tipping point of I want to see how this pans out and be involved in, the crime scenes and the interviews and, locking the bad guy up. So
just before we move on to the detective role that you took on, how did you find New Zealand Police as an employer with you having 2 young children? Were they sympathetic to that? Were they supportive?
Yeah.
Did you find it was something that as an employer they did their best to respect the situation that you found yourself in?
Yeah, I had 3 children when I joined, and I think when I joined, there was only 2 other females in the police in the Wairarapa police at the time, which there was 65 from memory, 70 staff. So to have a very minimal amount of women, I think was the beginning stages of the changes happening in the police. And I think it's evolved, I think, as time has gone on, and that I don't think that's just the police. I think that's everywhere. So I think, there was support there, but I think, as time has moved on, the police have realised the importance of making sure they look after women, making sure they're mindful of keeping families at home happy and safe, and all of the mental health stuff that goes around that also was, for me at the time and uniform back then, was very much just get on with it. There's nothing wrong with you. You have a couple of drinks and you forget about it. That was definitely the way that things were done then. And I also think there's some good stuff about that too. So I think it's evolved. But at the time the New Zealand Police were supportive of having a young family.
So then you moved, after your general duties, your frontline duties, into the detective role. Were you still in that area, Masterton, I think you called it? So you stayed in that locale. You took on detective duties. Tell us more about your time then as a detective, moving through ultimately to detective sergeant.
Yeah, I mean, it was based at the same area. So, the beauty of moving into the CIB at the time was a little bit more stability, so that I could be more involved with what was going on at home, because it was very difficult doing shift work and trying to be at kids' sports and things like that. So, there was some personal stuff that was really helpful. And then during that period, it's also a probationary period in the CIB as well. So you join, and then you continually to do studies and exams, and it's the pressure all the time of, I need to pass this step, and then I need to pass this step. So it was 2 years of, probably 2.5 years of constant pressure of, young family, doing a new job, but also having to have these steps that you had to reach all the time. So that was a challenge.
Challenging time, no doubt, and long hours. You got the children to bed, and you're probably studying into the night. So you're doing the day job, you're doing more studying. All that's juggling in what I guess would have been sort of 20s, early 30s. That sort of age banding, that sort of time.
Yeah, probably very early 30s was when I went into the CIB, and again, I think that experience there was. Because of the small area, the things that maybe the big cities deal with very quickly. It was the first responders uniform initially, and then the CIB, if there was something, a bigger job came in that uniform couldn't handle, or if it was outside their expertise, then the detectives would get called in. So often you're running these inquiries as a new detective, waiting for backup. Like, for example, there's no armed defenders squad in the Wairarapa, so anything that involved a firearm, staff were called over from Wellington. So it's an hour and a half's drive, and then of course the time of people getting prepared and getting ready. So 2.5, sometimes 3 hours is a long time to wait when you have a very volatile, active situation, and detectives were, our jobs were to put on the vest, to get the firearms, and cordon off that scene or the area until the armed defenders came in. But as you know, through your experience with policing, a lot of the time offenders don't sit in the house waiting. So, lots of active situations that
and you've got the golden hour, you've got that first hour where you're the actions that you take as a police officer are key to ultimate detection, successful detection and prosecution of the offender. So
absolutely, and as time goes on, you get more experience in the CIB too. What you see is what you're doing at those very beginning stages, they form the basis of prosecutions. So, all of the actions you take are scrutinised at court, which is very easy when you're sitting there in a room to judge people for
hindsight
for
is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh goodness, yes.
Yeah.
Did you at any point during your service look back on your decision to join the police and think, what on earth did I do? Or was it pretty much throughout? It was, I made a good call there.
Oh, absolutely. I loved it. And people often say to me now, well, why did you leave? I think there's always timings for everything in your life. I loved my time in uniform. I worked with an awesome bunch of mostly guys, but I learned a lot from them. A little bit about, I can remember the early days going into, a house where there was supposed to be someone breaking in, or someone was in the house, and walking down the side of the house, absolutely terrified, thinking, oh, and just, learning all the time and having, the guys that I was working with, come on, let's go, let's do this. And, the support and the camaraderie of the police it was an incredible experience.
It's sometimes easy for members of the public to forget that police officers are humans too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you just describing there I think you used the word terror, but your concern, let me just moderate it slightly, as you're walking down the side of that house, you're not knowing what's round that corner.
Yeah.
And yet, as a police officer on that occasion in uniform, it's you that society is entrusting to act in the public interest and go and respond to that call for service. So even then you didn't feel, I'm not sure this is for me. You were still...
No, at the time, obviously, the feelings were, oh, what am I doing? But, when things settle down, and, that's adrenaline, and adrenaline always makes you feel good, as everybody knows. You get an adrenaline shot and you feel amazing. So, afterwards, I think it was just like, and again, the team that I was working with at the time, we would finish work after something reasonably big like that had happened, and, have a couple of drinks, and, we did this, and that happened, and this happened, and, debrief it. It was fun. You're with all your friends, doing stuff that
watching each other's back.
Yeah, and doing things that other people don't want to do. Other people are scared to do, and it feels good that you are there to do the things that maybe other people don't want to see or do.
Now we're going to come on to in a separate video something about the skills, experiences, what that provided for you in life outside policing. But just touching on this for the moment, these police skills, these police experiences, they're not just of use in policing, are they? Certainly from what you told me, they're useful elsewhere in life, in a life outside policing.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you think of particular examples, and we'll come on a little later to further examples, but did that experience of walking down the side of the house, not knowing what was to face you, can you see any transferable elements in that, in what has happened in your later life at all?
I think there's probably other things that I think would stand above that, but just in general, putting yourself outside your comfort zone. And that's what that is, like all of those things are, it feels strange because our bodies are saying, oh, you shouldn't be walking down the side of a building, it's really dark, and most people would want to be coming inside and shutting the doors. But so I think that putting yourself outside your comfort zone definitely has made the steps that we've both made further on in our lives easier. It builds confidence. If I can do that, then I can do that, and so that's something that I think has given us confidence to move forward. The other thing that I think is massive is you see so much diversity in the police. You see, and as a detective, you also got to see, why people often did what they did. It's very easy to make a judgment call about why someone leads a life of crime, for example, and not really knowing people's backstories and what's led them down that path. I think police in the past have been very judgmental. You're a bad guy, it's very black and white, but policing in life is not black and white. That seeing those grey areas in the police, and in particular in the CIB, gives you the skills to deal with grey areas in your life. People are people. We have 67 staff here now. They're Balinese and they're amazing, beautiful people, but they have the same issues that we all have. So those experiences, maybe personal experiences myself and my life growing up, but also the stuff I've seen in the police, has also been hugely transferable to, giving examples for our staff and talking to them about, well, maybe this is happening, maybe they, again, mental health is not specific to a certain group of people. So all of the things that you just see and deal with in the police are massively transferable to community.
Now, during the course of that police service, you met your now husband, and the two of you transferred to the Solomon Islands, I believe. Mm-hmm. Tell us now about that transfer. The first married couple, I think, from New Zealand Police to transfer on posting to the Solomon Islands.
Yeah, I think too, from memory as well, probably the first married couple ever to go into that mission, the Ramsay mission. So it was a Ramsay, which stands for the Regional Assistance to Mission to the Solomon Islands. When we went was already 12, 13 years into its support into the Solomon Islands. And it came about through one of the detectives in our office had gone off to do 6 months and came back and was talking about it. And we were both like, oh, that would be great, that would be great. And then my youngest at the time was only 17, so she was still at school. So, oh, maybe we wouldn't be able to do this. So I spoke to her dad, who said, yeah, no worries, of course, happy to support there. So then we applied, not thinking that we would get in, and cut a long story short, we did. So so it was a fantastic experience.
Tell us a little more then about that fantastic experience it turned into 2 years. I don't think it was originally intended to be 2 years.
No, it was a 12-month contract to start with. I think actually might have even been 6 months to start with, but it ended up being 2 years. So we just kept extending, applying for extensions, but getting them, because we still had to be both released from the Wairarapa being a small policing area. They had to release us, so other staff there took on probably extra duties as a result of us not being there. It was fantastic. For me, I went into the family violence support role. So all of the roles there are in a mentoring capacity. So you're going in to mentor the Solomon Island Police and help them with some of those grey areas that I was talking about before. They had some major things happening within the islands 10 or 12 years prior to Ramsay going in. And my husband Rob went in to do war crimes. So the result of the Solomon Islands Ramsay mission starting was fighting between the islands that got out of control. And so there was a lot of historic war crimes to investigate, so he dealt with that.
And what in particular do you remember of that 2 years, other than what must have been an amazing personal experience, actually getting to see things that tourists to the Solomon Islands certainly wouldn't see? But what do you remember with particular either fondness or particular achievements in your time from then?
Probably for me, probably personally, was the experience of the compound living. I'd left school when I was 16 or 17, so I never went to university. I had my first child when I was 19, so I never flattered. I never had any of those experiences. So for me, that was like, oh, what's happening here? 150 people in a compound living behind barbed wire fences. That was very interesting to start with.
Took some getting used to.
Yeah, it took some getting used to. Absolutely. And then probably the biggest part was, for me, my job was the islands there's 100 islands within the Solomon Islands, spread out everywhere. So we had a police boat, and so my job was often on the boat for up to 7 to 10 days at a time with the Solomon Island Police, going to an island that, no one had been to, boats hadn't been to for 25 years, stuff like this, very, very, very remote places. And, as you can imagine, the things that were happening in a policing perspective there, and are probably still happening now due to the absolute geographical challenges of it. They were still doing public floggings and things that, for again, lots of mainstream people would very easily judge that. But what's the alternative? You can't. This place is miles from anywhere. They don't have the support and the policing, so they do it in a community way where everybody agrees on it, and that's how they deal with their
So for
offenders.
you, some real cultural challenges.
Yeah.
Also looking to understand how you can make a positive difference where you are just the one person. And what can you do in that? So what sorts of things did you were there as an advisor. You weren't there to take the decisions. You were there to offer that advice and for others to decide whether they pick up on that advice, act on it or not. Frustrations occasionally that your advice wasn't being followed?
There was probably, I think initially the feeling was, you come into any situation with your own ideas and your own morals and your own values. And, very quickly you want to push those onto, that happens, in life, push those onto other people. I think after a couple of months, I sort of very quickly realised that, I can't do that because they haven't got the tools and the experience and the education to be doing what I had experienced in the police. So I probably changed my mindset very early on into realising that I had a female sergeant that I was mentoring, and thought, well, this is where I'm going to get my best bang for my buck is through her. So I need to forget about the policing for a little bit and just work on a personal level with her, and giving her confidence and upskilling her, and giving her opportunities and things that I could do still through the police. We got her onto conferences in Fiji, Vanuatu, just things that I knew would open her world to maybe coming back and being able to challenge some of the hierarchy that was in the police at the time, the Solomon Island police at the time.
Fascinating story. We could, I know, go on in far more detail on your policing career. We're going to focus in the next video, or possibly two, on your life post-policing, including here at Samanvaya. Just as I have previously said, an absolutely stunning hotel that you now run with your husband, Rob. We'll go and have a look around. We'll talk about the transferable skills that you've had, skills that you've brought in from your policing career into hospitality. We'll talk about what it's like to be in yet another different culture, different environment. But just for the time being, Tracey, I'm just going to leave by cutting to the view that's from this terrace. So, Tracey Rackliff, thank you so much for the time being.
No problem, thank you.